Hey there, entrepreneurs. My name is Sushant, and welcome to TrepTalks. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Chris Vandersluis to the show. Chris is the president of HMS Software. HMS Software is the publisher of TimeControl, a multi-purpose timesheet system which is distributed worldwide. And HMS also maintains a consulting service division which specializes in the implementation of TimeControl timesheet system, as well as enterprise project management environments. And today I'm going to ask Chris a few questions about his entrepreneurial story and some of the strategies and tactics that he has used to start and grow his business. So Chris, welcome to TrepTalks, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So, of course, your business, you had started your business in 1984.
It's a long time ago. Yep.
So almost, I mean,
40 years next year.
I was born in 1985.
Well,
so maybe you can share a little bit about yourself, what were you doing at that time and what kind of got you, I mean, in 1984 was still pretty new for like software and things like that.
Well,
right?
Software had been around a long time, but yeah, I was a consultant doing some programming of what was considered quite new then, the PC. And a partner and I got started in doing project management software. And we did that, started really in 1983, and then the business really got going in 1984. And we were deploying brand new ideas, which was project management software on a PC. Companies at the time, mid to large size companies, were buying PCs for every desk or for many desks. Ultimately, it would be every desk. And one of the first pieces of software that was commercially available was a project management tool. And so this displaced what had been in the past, many computers and mainframe computers, as everything distributed to desktops. And so we caught that wave, and we were doing project management software deployments and programming and doing the things that these mid to large size companies needed in the project management area. That's really where we got started.
And I definitely want to know more about your product, but can you take me back to 1984? And
sure.
Did you, at that point, did you think that software is going to be what it is now?
Oh, I don't think anybody could have seen, what it would be now. I mean, the idea that I can wear as much computing power on my wrist that I had on my desk at the time, I mean, we didn't really see that. We marveled over the first hard disks, which, were about this size, and thought, oh, 10 megabytes, this is incredibly great. And so we marveled at those things, just like everyone else did as these things came out. And so we didn't know which way the business would go. But I think it was pretty clear to us that the door having been opened to software for the corporate world, that was not going to go away, that this was going to extend and expand, and many other products would come. We happened to be in the project management world. I mean, our very first project was for Philips, and that was just happenstance. We had some contacts there, and they had a project management office, and they were trying to get a project management office automated on PCs. They were actually building their own PCs at the time. They're not in that business anymore, I don't think, but they were. And so we just happened to be in the right place at the right time to help them. And we wrote a timesheet system and tied it in with a commercial project management tool. I mean, if you really go back to the history of project management software, project management tools were the first things written for computers. So one of the first tools written for mainframes, one of the first tools written for mini computers, and one of the first tools available kind of all the way down to phones these days. But so it's there's a lot of computing involved with project management and data storage. And so these, this was a category that easily adapted itself to automation. And so we caught that wave, and we said, this is going to be a place where we should put our time.
And so your product, of course, as you said, it's a project management category, but your product itself is, timesheet management.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about, what your product is and what is the problem that it solves? And then I guess we can talk about, how, I guess, the big players, which really are, in the enterprise resource planning space. I mean, I'm assuming that's kind of like a bigger brother of,
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch that evolve, right? I mean, if I go back to 84 and that first client, we said, well, we found for you a flexible open architecture project scheduling tool, but no timesheet. They said, oh, we need both. We said, great, we'll write that timesheet for you. And over the next 10 years, we wrote several timesheets for our clients. Our clients, partly because I guess of the way that we started the business, we're always mid to large size clients. We've never had a client our size or smaller. And so we're a small team working with big clients. And so the timesheet problem that we were trying to solve in 84 was that the finance department was commissioning this request, but the project management department would manage it. So the project management department said, no, we need both scheduling, kind of planning future tasks, and timesheets measuring past tasks. And the finance department said, that's great. We also are going to send that data to payroll and for internal reporting for job costing and R&D tax credits and things like that. So we said, bah, no problem. Except I think we wrote that product 3 times before they were satisfied. We would come in the room and they would be sitting like on opposite sides of a conference table. All the project people on one side and all of the finance people on the other, and sometimes an IT person right at the end, to referee. And their needs were quite different, but the timesheet was going to look the same, right? And timesheets do kind of look the same. They look like a grid, right? Whatever timesheets you've experienced, it's like columns of days or columns of things to do and rows of days or periods of time. And so the grid gets entered quite simply. It was once the data was in that became our problem. And so we wrote the first version, and the project people went, bah, that's perfect. And the finance people says, well, it looks pretty good, and then ran it in test for a week and said, no, completely unacceptable. As we posted the data, they said a third of the payroll was missing. We said, well, that's a problem. How did that happen? Well, it turned out that the project managers had disqualified a bunch of tasks. And so the lines from the timesheets had evaporated. So we said, oh, okay. We came back again. This time, the finance people thought that was great. The project people said, this is completely unacceptable. And so we realized that to satisfy what they needed, we would have to create something very flexible, but also that would have in the background this idea that there are multiple perspectives of what happens to this data. And so that was really our very first multi-purpose timesheet. And we've continued that business in 10 years later. In 94, we released TimeControl as a commercial product. Saying to ourselves, we have all this experience and we still don't see anything in the market that really tackles that problem. One timesheet, multiple needs. And we were encountering clients who said, listen, we don't want any project management tools. We've got several. Can you solve this timesheet problem for us? And we said, articulate the timesheet problem. They go, we have too many of them. It's not that we don't have any. We've got several. Payroll's got one, billing's got one, project management's got one. The people who do finance reports got something different. Can we not consolidate this down to one timesheet? And that was really the birth of TimeControl. And even now, yes, ERP people are probably our primary competitor, but even now that is a challenge that people have. And it's most easily solved by finance saying, we picked ours, you guys do what you want. And then you say, well, great, we're going to have multiple timesheets. Nobody votes for that. Right? Nobody wakes up in the morning and said, well, it's Friday. Oh, Friday. I get to do multiple timesheets today. No, it's tough enough to get people to do one.
Yeah.
If you could simplify that for end users and yet accommodate what those background needs are, we thought that was going to be a business, business model.
So software, obviously, and as you're talking about it, I'm thinking, in the old days, in those
before you were born, those days, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole way of writing software and the whole methodology of like, let's say, you create a software and then you take it to the customer and then they provide feedback. And now, of course, what's called, I think, waterfall and so forth. And now it's so much more around agile and finding the product market fit and minimum viable product and so forth. What has been your experience like, someone who's building software, have you kind of adopted your way of building software over time?
Yeah, okay. You mentioned a bunch of different terms there. So, I mean, I'm in the project management business, so I'm happy to talk about that all afternoon if you want. But let me back up a little bit. The notion of agile has been around since forever. HMS has used what you would call agile techniques since its inception. An iterative approach to say, well, look, let's get the basic system going, and then we're going to improve it over time. That's agile in a nutshell. The term agile came out of what you were speaking about before, the ERP systems that turned out to require enormous programming effort and became these mega projects, which nobody could have until they were complete. Not phase by phase, not section by section, but no, we're doing it all until we're done. Those were nightmare projects, and they were sparked in leading up to Y2K. Right? There's an enormous movement in the 90s to say all these finance systems have to be updated because they're not going to work properly after Y2K. How much work is that going to be? Lots. But it also opened the door to SAP, Oracle, and other ERP vendors who said, well, we can provide you a commercial enterprise scale product to do that work. Don't bother rewriting your old Fortran code. We'll take care of that for you. So that became a whole movement. And following that, kind of after Y2K didn't, explode the world, and planes didn't fall out of the air, and people found that they could get their systems back up and running in January, people in the programming business said, we need to not be doing that anymore. And this movement of agile gained traction. The notion of project management in software was kind of newfound, right? Project management organizations like, say, the Project Management Institute have been around since the 1980s. I'm an early member of that organization, but project management had gotten started more in construction, heavy manufacturing, heavy industry, and software was like a newcomer to it. To say, oh yeah, that'd be great for us. The notion of a waterfall project, there were never really waterfall projects. It's not like we're going to do this and then we're going to do this and we're going to do this like a waterfall. It's a way of saying, when we say don't go with waterfall, it's a way of saying project management has moved on. We can do things in a more productive, effective manner, and I'm all for that. But again, we've been doing that, since the 80s, not since the 2000s. And it's been called different things, and you can find the references to it. I don't have to make that up, but yeah, I think it's great to do work in more of an agile format. One of the things that affects our business is that agile is something that's a very tactical methodology, right? It's something that is that's ideally suited at the team level, right? So I talk to people all the time and go, oh yeah, we use agile. I go, great. Well, you could consider me a spokesperson for agile because I've written about it, dozens of times. I'm on record as talking about agile often. And then I say, so where do you get your project budgets? And there's a pall of silence because they go, well, I don't know. Where do you get the size of your resource team? Like, where's your resource capacity come from? And they go, yeah, I don't know. No, because these are not decisions made at the tactical level, right? I don't go to a development team and say, so what will be the budget next year? I don't know. Management does that. And how do they do that? In what you would have considered waterfall. So it's not like waterfall goes away. But these tools, like the tools that we would use for operational project management, like a scheduling bar chart, not of great interest to a person who's in the front lines writing code. And something that would be like a year-long or 2-3 year long projection on a spreadsheet of our budgets and resource capacity was not going to be of interest to either those operational project managers or the tactical people. That's of great interest to the manager of HR or the manager of IT or the chief operating officer, the CEO even. So we've come to think over the last few years that, get the tools into the hands of the people who need them. And one of the challenges that I think we've had for Agile is the notion of, are you accountable against any kind of plan? There's a lot of people who we've encountered saying, well, Agile means I don't have to tell you how much time I spent. I find that shocking, right? Really? You don't care how much that feature costs? I go, no. And how long will it take? I go, we'll give it to you when you're ready. I mean, that's a Dilbert comic, right? So, it's such a cliche that you go, listen, management would like to know what our budget is for next year, or they can't manage.
Mhm.
Just saying, I'll give you what I give you, not a sufficient answer. And that brings us right back to there's a place for waterfall. Once you know what it is that we're trying to accomplish, an iterative approach at the tactical level is very effective. It's ideal. We used to call it design build,
Mm.
or rolling wave planning. And these days, I mean, we talk about agile, but we still do Scrum meetings and we still have a backlog. I mean, if you looked at
Yeah,
our list of tasks, the programmers are looking at cards on a board and organized by columns. But at the planning level, we're looking at spreadsheets and bar charts, just like every other company in the world.
for sure. And even I think right now there is no, I think, one approach that a company takes. Every company is different, and I think they adapt
For
to
sure.
what their needs are. Can you talk a little bit about your customers and share a little bit about how you go about acquiring a new customer, your sales cycle?
Sure.
What does that discussion look like when you're talking to? You mentioned that you mostly work with medium to large size businesses, and
Mhm.
usually, like the purchasing cycle in these businesses is long, and you have
It
multiple
is.
stakeholders and so forth.
Right.
So what is it like working with big companies and trying to make a sale?
Yeah, so I think the key word there is patience, right? And so we take a bit of a different view over the sales cycle, but also the acquisition process, acquiring a new customer, and the marketing process. If you look at our website compared to many other people who are in my industry, it's different. There's no paywall. There's no kind of you have to get through this gateway to be able to see our information. We have all our information out there,
Hmm.
and so people can educate themselves on our website with white papers and webcasts and a plethora of information that lets them evaluate whether we're in their category or not. We
Hmm.
expect to talk to a prospective client for months,
Hmm.
maybe years. We just closed a client that we've been talking to for 4 years.
Hmm.
And it's not like every day was a step forward. It was like, okay, well, we're ready in some respects and we're not ready in others. And we would, great, we're still here. And then, the team would start the exercise up again and then go, still see we have issues to deal with internally before we can move forward. But I mean, we talk to people over a long period of time. 4 years is a bit excessive, but it's easy for us to spend 9 months on the acquisition and getting started process. Um, our clients, I mean, our clients are great. It's an envious list. It includes AMD and Interpol and Homeland Security and the government of Quebec and Bruce Nuclear Power and so on. So I mean, we have clients who are mid-sized. We have clients who are highly recognizable. We're very proud of the list. I mean, whether it's engineering companies like Andritz or Aegeon or our clients who are who are in security or government affairs, we speak well to both to all of those categories. And that's because we're highly flexible. We really understand the whole notion of the process of both your timesheet and your project management, so we can speak to that quite easily. The way that we get clients, we can't just advertise on Google. I mean, we do advertise on Google and on Bing, but we spend a lot of time in the education process. So I'll do a podcast like today, or I'll do a talk on the the PMBA, the Project Manager Business Analyst world, which I'm doing next week or the week after, or we'll go speak in person when we can do that. Had a break, of course, for COVID, but these days I'm getting a chance to go out and do that more, or one of the staff will. So we try to get out to talk about our vision and our product, not so much in a product demonstration, but let's talk about the process challenges that people like our clients have in terms of managing resource capacity, managing the work, determining what things cost, and these different levels of management who have all these different perspectives. And so that, I mean, it tends to work well for us. People find us, of course. We spend a certain amount of effort on search engine optimization so that they can find us, and on our products that we link to, like Oracle's Primavera, for example, where we're reasonably well known for the people in that business.
In terms of when you're having these discussions, what are some of like of course, a big part of the discussion is what is the process that these companies are trying to optimize, or how does the
For sure.
software fit into their like
Yep.
process and technology stack and so forth. What are some of the main criteria or some of the main things besides that are important, like in this kind of a software category? I'm assuming, if you're working with like government organizations and so forth, security is important, because now, and I don't know if your software is in the cloud, but there's probably a lot of similar software that are now deployed in cloud, and that's usually a concern for a lot of businesses, especially bigger businesses, maybe even government entities. And I'm assuming, integration, as you mentioned, with Oracle and some of these, ecosystem that companies are using, that's probably important for them. So can you talk me through some of these criteria, factors that these companies are kind of assessing when they're looking for these kind of a
Sure.
product?
So as you mentioned earlier, every client's different. So the needs for every client are different. And TimeControl is available in the cloud. It has been for like 12, 13 years already. So we're well familiar with that environment. It's still available on premise. And some clients, for whatever their particular requirements are, say, no, we really can't consider a cloud option. We have to go on premise. The U.S. Federal Reserve said, we said, oh, you could go in cloud, and they laughed. They said, yeah, no, that'd be great, but no. And so, so some people deploy on-prem and some people deploy in the cloud. We obviously have a high interest in security in the cloud. We've been SOC 2 audited and so on. So we do all of those things that one would normally have to do to make clients feel safe. And our focus on the product overall is to make sure that it's going to be secure regardless of how you deploy it. The kinds of requests or the kinds of features or criteria that people ask about include a few things. First of all, on the finance side, to say, well, this is going to become a part of our finance engine in some ways, talk to us about the auditability of this data. Right? If you ask a finance person about their accounting system, that's high on the list. Can I count on the data that I'm now going to make business decisions on or pay people with? And so TimeControl has to meet those criteria. And that's a very different level of scrutiny than you would get with, say, just a project management tool. If I go to a large company and I say, hey, the project management tool at the end of the year said these were our costs. And look, it's like within $5,000 of what the accounting department says. Everyone goes, oh, yeah, that's great. But if I come to you and I say, so your paycheck is off by a penny, a single penny, after a few weeks, you go, look, I know I'm being petty, but it's my penny. And I feel badly. So I'm down here at payroll asking if you could, fix it.
Yeah.
So we have to have a very different level of, of criteria and safety of that data compared to, say, a project management tool. Now, project management gets to enjoy that too. And they get to enjoy another benefit with TimeControl that we talk about to say your data will now match finance. So there's not going to be that attempt at reconciliation that many companies spend a lot of time on, or that concern to say, well, your data can't possibly be accurate because finance has, the for sure correct data. Now it will be sourced from the same place. The current term for that is, one source of the truth. Wouldn't that be great? Yeah, so we provide that with an auditable tool that can be used for multiple purposes at the same time. So that's probably the number one criteria that people ask about. But after that, it's, can you integrate with the tools we have? And so we put a high degree of focus on that. We have a bidirectional API that people can program to. We have predefined links to other APIs like Oracle or Microsoft Project or other tools. And so those things, are all part of that, whether it's an estimating tool like Innate or a project management tool like Microsoft Project for the Web. I mean, so we do those kinds of links, or SharePoint, and so we do those kinds of links already. That becomes a key, and the flexibility becomes very key as because people have a list of requests. Can you track data like this? Yes. Can you track data like that? Yes. Can you track data like this and like that, but at the same time? Yes. And so so the ability to add fields, control the security by field to show certain things to some users and some things to others. All of that become key criteria. The other thing that is popular in TimeControl is not just looking at past work or planning future work, but things like vacation approvals. You say, well, how hard can that be? But in fact, that's quite an involved conversation to go, who will approve for requests for time off? So TimeControl controls that. the ability to report on the data in many different ways. TimeControl, provides that to say, well, could you automate the reports to show only exception reports and email them to me if there's something I should see? Yes, we can control that. So the flexibility becomes a super key element of that. And then, there's all the basic things. TimeControl has evolved since its very first version back in '84, to, like you say, on the cloud. It has a mobile app. It has, multiple ways to interface that and multiple editions. Along the way, we had clients who said, well, we would like to bring this into the field to use for our industrial purposes, like in a construction site. But a lot of the users won't actually use it. We'll have people entering data for them. How would that work? So we created an industrial version called TimeControl Industrial. It included crew timesheets and management of materials and equipment and so on. So TimeControl, covers quite a wide swath of possible needs, and we like it that way.
What does your team look like? It does.
They look like a whole bunch of hidden people, really, at the moment.
Hidden people, like working from home, or?
Yeah, mostly remote. We're a hybrid at the moment.
Okay.
We're based in Montreal.
Okay.
I'm not there at the moment, but we have our headquarters is Montreal. We try to get the staff in on Mondays. In Montreal at the moment, there's been a whole bunch of snow this week, so we're asking people to stay home for a couple of days. But we're in one day and remote for 4. So getting the best of both worlds, I think. Staff are welcome to come to the office when they want. We try to co-locate our staff in the Montreal area so that they have the opportunity to do both, as opposed to going all remote or offshoring our development, which we've avoided. And so so it's a tight team. It's less than 20 people. Everyone knows everyone. It's it's a team. Some of the people have been there for a long time. I have a couple of staff people who've been there now for longer than TimeControl has been there. So over 30 years.
Wow, very interesting. Can you talk a little bit about your own evolution as an entrepreneur? Like, you've been doing this 40 years, and I'm sure when you started out, you were probably more on the technical side than the business side.
I was thinner. I had more hair. It was darker. Yes, I've evolved quite a lot, but not always in good ways. Yeah, I got started. I was in my 20s, and full of optimism. Excited about this new wave of technology in the world, and wanting desperately to be a part of it. My background, I'm an economist out of McGill University in Montreal, so that was where I got started. Very interested in business, and I was sure that I could get started. And we started on a shoestring. It was bootstrapped. We didn't have a whole bunch of money. We worked tirelessly day and night to get that first company in and have the next client lined up. The first year was lean. We didn't have a whole lot of money to share. And then the next year was way better. And then things just kind of slowly took off after that. The end of the second year, we were able to hire, our first person, and then, a second person followed a little bit after that. And so then we were kind of on our way and looking for these companies. We were helped by, being at the beginning of a growth wave of computing and of software evolution. And for me, things along the way have shifted multiple times. In the late 90s, I was encouraged strongly to say, get the company public, because everyone was going public. You don't need to make a profit, they said. Look at Amazon, who hadn't made a profit for a long time, but still was, evaluated at crazy numbers. And so we looked at doing that. We were encouraged to do that by people in the finance industry, and said, we can, find money for it, and we can get you money for expansion. We've resisted doing that, and the initial experiments that we did with that were uncomfortable and didn't seem natural to us. And so we have continued to grow organically. For me, I guess as I've gotten older, but also as the company has matured, we've taken a very conservative, organic view of growth. I talk to a fair number of people who are entrepreneurs, but also who are financing entrepreneurs. We get called on a regular basis. You look at our client list and you go, oh, maybe those guys would like some money and to expand fast and have some kind of hockey stick growth and then sell. But for a lot of entrepreneurs, they've gotten into the industry to get out. They got in to say, well, I'll be in, and then we're going to have all this growth, and I'm going to max out and sell the business. I never got into the business to get out. I got into the business to stay in. And so, I mean, you could look at our business and say, well, 40 years and you've never sold it, 40 years and you never went public. And I go, yeah, by design. It's the way that we created the business, and I very much like it. And I'm not sure what kind of business I could have in the future that could ever have the kind of impact that I have. I mean, we impact a fairly small element of someone's day, right? End users use our product for 5-10 minutes a week, right? It's a tiny part of the overall pie chart of their week, but it's a very significant part. Like if TimeControl doesn't work, the projects don't get managed. If TimeControl doesn't work, you don't get paid, maybe. I mean, so it's a very important part of your week, even if it doesn't take a whole lot of your time. So we're making an impact of companies that have put things into space, that have cured disease, that have that manage security and finances. I mean, huge companies that people recognize, and so that's, I mean, kind of cool, as a lifestyle. And it affords me and the staff a pretty good living, and so we do reasonably well out of it. Company's profitable, and even if we are managing our growth only organically, it has slow and steady growth. So, I mean, that's, I kind of like that business model.
For sure. I mean, software is definitely a great business model. I mean, your costs are very limited once you've created the software. And
yeah,
of course, it's a recurring revenue business model. So I think
you have to invest in it all the time, right? We're about to release at the end of this week a new version of TimeControl. So version 8.5 will be coming out on Friday. We've been working on it all year. I mean, it's not like we can't, we can just sit back and let the money roll in. We have to invest in the marketing side. We have to invest in development. We have to invest, of course, in support and stability of what we've already created, but also, expanding to new things.
So, I mean, talking about support, when you have a customer, I'm sure every once in a while they do need some sort of support. Can you talk about what kind of support you provide? Like, do big customers have like a project manager that is available to help them anytime they need any?
Yeah, it's not so much a project manager that they would need. So we get two kinds of requests. The first is the same thing that everyone who's ever been in the support business has heard. Your product's not working. So we chuckle a little bit and we go, so when you say not working, can you describe what you mean? Because that may not mean TimeControl is broken, right? It may mean that you did something and you got a result that you weren't at all expecting. And the answer to that may be how you used it, what data's in there, did you notice that you had used this feature, not that feature? So so that's usually somebody who is very aware of the product, but also understands basic business process. What we do with our technical staff is everyone rotates. So all of our developers spend some time in tech support. All of our developers spend some time in QA. Everyone rotates. There's no isolated person who doesn't get to talk to a client. And so that affects how we hire people, and the kinds of people that we get are generally pretty high end. I mean, you may have called a tech support desk at a time to go, having a problem with my, whatever it is. And I'm not sure if you've had this experience, but then they go, yeah, I'm going to have to escalate this. Well, yeah, you've now kind of gotten out of the help desk to somebody who is maybe more of a developer or somebody who is on the inside technical track or a more senior person. All of our technical people are developers. So whenever you make a call, you've already escalated. And it tends to make our clients, remarkably delighted with our support response. Now, sometimes someone calls and says, so I've got a support request, and we go, great, what is that? And they describe an enhancement or a feature that we simply don't have. And we have a process for answering that too. I mean, the first would be, tell us the business requirement that you're trying to overcome, because maybe TimeControl can do that already. And that often is the case. Someone says, oh, I'm going to have to do this. Can you change TimeControl? We go, we can change the configuration. And look, that would solve your problem. Sometimes people make a request for an enhancement that we've thought of, but haven't done yet. We had one of those happen a few weeks ago and said, that's already in TimeControl 8.5. You can hold on for 3 weeks. You'll probably see it. And they went, oh, that's great. That's, fine. And then sometimes people make a request that we go, we should really consider that for future versions. So all of that becomes part of the support model. Making sure you're responsive, making sure you understand things. But it also happens that we have people with 20 years, 15 years, 25, 30 years of experience in project management techniques, project management methodology, in the flow and process of project management, and in the flow of process of how your payroll would work, how your billing might work, how your job costing or reporting for government authorities would work, whether that's for the Defense Contract Audit Agency in the US or for R&D tax credits in many different countries. And so we understand that before you get started, in many cases, to the same degree or more than the person calling, who then goes, "Ooh, I have to have you speak to, the person in charge of that process here." And then, that person is kind of delighted to find someone at the other end of the line who says, "Oh, no, we understand that. Is this what we're talking about?" And so that short circuits a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of ineffectiveness of people trying to understand what is needed elsewhere. And it's not uncommon for us to say, "Well, we can do that, but have you checked with payroll? Because they may not be happy with that."
Hmm.
And then someone goes, "Oh, no, I didn't think to do that." Yeah, give them a call and then get back to us. And they go, "Yeah, payroll says no." So it's like, well, that's fine. I mean, because we understand that, yeah, if you do that, that's going to maybe affect some other part of your business process. So, I mean, that notion of having our technical staff working on a deployment, and having to work on business requirements with a client, working on QA, working on technical support, and then, of course, doing development, has paid off for us.
Awesome. What is your outlook on the whole advent of AI? And have your business kind of assimilated some of the, what's coming out with like generative AI?
I have a fair amount of background on the AI conversation. We had artificial intelligence built into underlying technology in TimeControl in '99. So it's not like it's a new conversation for me. I own the domain timecontrol.ai. It's not like I'm unaware of the conversation, but there's two things about AI, and particularly generative AI, that I think are key. The first is, what are you going to feed it? Right? If it's going to just take information from the internet, that's a super dangerous conversation, because I don't know what it's going to find on the internet to get back with answers. If it's only going to, if we're only going to feed AI for certain kinds of things, then what are we simply looking for, an interpreter? And we've looked at this for TimeControl. We've looked, should we put ChatGPT into the product? And my answer is, yeah. To do what? To teach people. The kinds of people who would use ChatGPT in TimeControl would only be administrators. Would end users do it? No, they don't want to ask. They simply want to say, "I want to get in and out of this as fast as possible." The most likely request from a timesheet enterer, like a timesheet user, is, "Fill up my timesheet for me. Do the same kind of thing as the last few weeks." Yeah, I think payroll's a little uncomfortable with that. So the auditability of the data now becomes kind of questionable. And as I'm sure you've seen in so many AI articles and conversations, to go, so what's the underlying algorithm and how does it decide what its answer was? Well, there's no transparency to that. And so for the moment, we see the AI debate kind of underway, not super aligned yet to where we could make a difference with it. But it's not like I'm unaware. We keep up to it on a regular basis to see, yeah, if there's an application here where we could have AI available to us inside the product or associated to the product in a way that would make a difference, then we'd be well positioned to take advantage.
Awesome. Now, in every entrepreneur's journey, there's always mistakes made, lessons learned, failures.
No, it's not true.
I'm sure that's part of your, there's always things coming up. What has been kind of, from a business perspective, entrepreneur perspective, what has been like some, a big mistake that kind of taught you a big lesson about business or people in general?
Yeah, I've got 40 years of them. If I picked probably the biggest error, or one of the biggest errors I made along the way, was being enticed in 98, 99 to take in for outside investors. And it took a year after their money arrived. Money came as promised, but it took a year for me to finally come to the realization that the people who had invested in my business, and it's not like they hid anything, but they had no understanding of how to run our business. And yet they now held seats on our board. They held voting shares. They were not a majority. We had insisted on not giving up a majority share. But even so, they had tremendous influence. And their message was, grow at any cost. This was terrible advice in the year 2000. And it took me 6 years to buy them out of the business. And I would count those 6 years from an entrepreneur perspective. I mean, TimeControl did fine, and the business did okay, but I would count those 6 years as the worst years of my career at HMS. So I mean, from that perspective, that is certainly an error. And we've made project errors, and we've had other kinds of errors where we tried something and it simply didn't take off, and we looked back and corrected our perspective, corrected our view. But the largest one was probably that investor error, and it has made me. I mean, I freely talk about it with people who call to ask to invest in the business. I say, yeah, I've had a bad experience, and I'm uneager to repeat it. So, so they get that. I'm not the only entrepreneur to have had people in the business whose money was fine, but their advice was not. So,
yeah. I mean, that's always kind of the big challenge, right? Like if the investors who are investing in the business have a different vision of what the business should be, or even like, if you have co-founders and, you have different vision about what the business should be in the future, I think that becomes a big challenge, right?
Well, I mean, we had that experience in 93. In 93, my original partner said, I don't want to do it anymore. I have a different view for what I want to spend my times doing, and it's not working on project software. I want to be doing kind of what we were doing originally, doing consulting and so on. And so I mean, I hear that, right? I mean, we parted on good terms. We found an arrangement that would work for him and work for me, and I headed off on my own after that. And I mean, I understand that founders can head into different directions. I mean, I think the best time to organize that is while you're on great terms and not trying to fight each other on it. And hopefully, find some arrangement by which you can part and still be friends, or at least still be colleagues or business acquaintances. That's a long time ago for me, but and so yeah. So I mean, when you get investors, I mean, the investors at the time were pretty clear. They go, we want to get in for for a dime and out for $1. And they were quite clear about it. We want you to grow so that we can get out for 10 times our investment. That's our only interest. And if you can take this money and turn it into growth of 10 times and let us sell it, then that'd be great. And I mean, I think I was naive in the way that I approached that conversation. At the time, I paid an expensive price for the education of it. But there's still people like that out there. I mean, and there are, I'm sure, many different investors who would be very different. I've talked to some great people over the years to say, yeah, we want to have you keep doing what you're doing, but we just want to be a part of it. Here's how we would participate. I mean, great for, if you can find someone like that, and if the money will help. One of the things that seemed unclear to me at the time is exactly how will we spend that money in a way that will cause that 10 times growth. And we had a business plan, and that business plan was not really able to be reached in 2001 to 2005.
For sure. Now I'm going to move on to our rapid fire segment. In this segment, I'm going to ask you a few quick questions, and you have to answer them maybe in a 1 or 2 word or a sentence. The first one is one book recommendation for entrepreneurs or business professionals.
I've always been a fan of Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm. And so I think that's probably a must read. These days in project management, the American Management Association's handbook on project management is a good read too. But for business, I think for entrepreneurs, probably Jeffrey Moore.
Awesome. An innovative product or idea that you're excited about right now?
Yeah, I think the notion of where AI may actually make a difference, and where I think the notion of rapid coding is probably going to make a huge impact on the industry. What they call no-code coding or no-code software. It's not really no-code software, but it's like highly assisted, coding is going to open the door for a lot of people who are not as programmatically technical to create products and put them available on the cloud. And I think that's probably going to give us a wave of new things we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, I'm doing some of that myself.
There you go.
Program. A business or productivity tool or software that you would recommend, or a productivity tip?
Well, productivity tip, I think, and we use this ourselves, is figure out where your time's going, and not just you, but your team. How much do things cost you? We had an incident like a year ago where I was asking about particular features that were on our list, and came to a point where I go, how come this feature is still on our to-do list? What's our original budget for this? How much time have we spent on this? And it turned out to be a crazy amount of time. And that was because we'd had a mismatch between the work and who was doing the work. And so figuring out where you're spending your time and what it's costing you is probably my biggest productivity tip. For productivity tools, I mean, we're in the same boat as everybody else. We're using Salesforce for sales, and we're, we use Office for our office productivity. That's probably the same for a lot of folks. We're on Slack for chat, and I think we're on Zoom or Teams for doing conferences. So, all of those are super effective.
Another startup or business that you think is currently doing great things?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, right? I saw an announcement recently for Babbel. I mean, we work in a multilingual environment. I speak English and French. We sell our product like everywhere. And it used to be so hard to get people to be able to communicate across language lines. That's probably going to, I mean, I see that they're, increasing in size and doing great things. That's probably going to be pretty cool.
I mean, with AI, I don't think there will be need to learn a new language.
Well, yeah, so it kind of opens up like the old Star Trek Universal Translator, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How far are we from that? I don't know, kind of close now. So,
yeah,
at least for Earth-based languages, I guess. But yeah, you can use something like that to do both spoken and written language kind of now. So I think anything like that opens the door to more people being able to access your product in a different way. And for TimeControl, it's an odd industry, right? We sell a product that end users could care less about, right? Nobody's excited to do their timesheet on Friday. They do it because they have to. Administrators get super excited. Project managers get super excited about the data, but people actually entering their timesheet never found somebody keen to do it. And so the easier you make it for the end users, the better. And 95 to 98% of our users are those people who are just putting in data. So can I get it to you in your language? Can I pre-answer any of your questions? Can I make it faster to get in and out of? All of that counts. And so being able to display it in a language that's more familiar to you is an obvious one.
For sure. Final question, best business advice that you have ever received or you would give to other entrepreneurs?
Well, I think the best, I mean, I've received so much advice over the years. I don't think I could pick out just one, but if I was going to give advice, I'd say patience is probably the best one. If you're an entrepreneur and the results that you believe in haven't yet come, be patient. You've heard the expression being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
I'm of the mind that if you found the right place, put up a tent and park yourself there. And recommit to the vision that you believe in, and let the right time come. And that's held true for us. It's held true for a lot of people. But patience in those results is maybe the hardest thing to do for an entrepreneur, but probably the most value. Some different people have told me over the years to say, "Oh, maybe you should pack it in." And I go, "I'll pack it in when I decide. Not when you decide." And that's worked out okay for us. 40 years next year.
Then there's no reason to pack it in. I mean,
exactly.
If you're
planning to
having,
do that anytime soon.
If you're having fun, then
exactly.
Well, Chris, those were all the questions that I had. Thank you so much again for sharing your story,
pleasure.
for sharing your business lessons and learnings. If anybody wants to get in touch or find out more about your products, what's the best way to do that?
TimeControl.com is probably the easiest one. I mean, there's other ways to reach me. You can just, Google my name and you'll find many different contacts. But TimeControl.com, and send a contact message and say you wanted to talk to Chris, and that'll get to me.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you again so much, and I wish you all the very best in your business and
thanks very much.
Also personal life as well. So yeah, thank you so much again for joining me today at TrepTalks.
Great to be here. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.